Many of the Trump tax cut provisions are going to expire in 2025, which is where Project 2025 steps in. This 922-page handbook for the next conservative presidency takes a big swing at tax policy, and the changes suggested would mean higher taxes for the average American family, widening America's already massive income gap. And here's how. This year, the United States has 7 tax brackets. Your taxable income and filing status determine which bracket you fall under, and your bracket determines your tax rate, which outlines the percentage that you'll owe on different portions of your income. The top tax bracket has a federal income tax rate of 37%. The lowest bracket has a 10% income tax. Millions of Americans, by the way, don't make enough money to fall into any of the 7 brackets, which means they do not pay federal income tax, though virtually all Americans pay some form of tax, whether it's sales tax or state tax or property tax. But about 40% of American households end up not owing any federal income tax when they apply for government tax credits and deductions. Not so under Project 2025. In fact, on page 696 of Project 2025, it calls for, quote, simplifying the tax structure by enacting a simple 2-rate individual tax system of 15% and 30% that eliminates most deductions, credits, and exclusions. So, depending on your current income, you could be taxed more or less under this plan, but for millions of working-class Americans, taxes would shoot up. By raising the floor of our tax brackets but lowering the ceiling, Project 2025 would shift the country's tax burden from the rich to middle and lower class Americans. It's a tax hike for working class Americans. According to analysis from the Center for American Progress, a nonpartisan policy institute, under this new system, the average family of 4 would see a tax increase of $2,985. While households reporting over $10 million in income would see a tax cut of $1.5 million. And to address the second part of that section, eliminating, quote, most deductions, credits, and exclusions, the tax credits work like government incentives, allowing citizens to write off expenses that are generally in society's interest. Project 2025 just says eliminate most. So which ones? Eliminate the tax credit meant to give tax breaks to parents with children under 17? Sure. It was only used by 36 million households in 2022. Eliminate the American Opportunity Tax Credit, which allows people to write off tuition costs and school supplies? Why not? Eliminate climate credits, included in the President's Inflation Reduction Act? Those tax breaks are meant to encourage folks to live climate-conscious lives. They've been more popular than expected since they were introduced, including, according to new data released by the Treasury Department, Americans collectively claimed $8.4 billion by using one of Biden's green subsidies to build solar panels or otherwise make their homes more energy efficient. And everything we've gone over so far is jammed into just one single sentence on page 696 in this massive tome. So I want to look at some of the other suggestions in Project 2025. It suggests decreasing the corporate tax rate to 18%. It had already been cut to 21% by the Trump tax cuts. It was at 35% before that. It calls for a new consumption tax, which is charged to you when you spend money, and floats the idea of a national sales tax. Sales and consumption taxes are the most regressive form of taxes and represent a vastly disproportionate burden for poor and middle-class families. Project 2025 argues for the repeal of the excise tax on drug manufacturers, which would destroy the government's ability to control the price of prescription medication. It calls for a cap of $12,000 on untaxed employee benefits that companies can write off for deductions, which would disincentivize employers from offering more comprehensive health benefits. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the average family medical plan costs $17,000, $5,000 more than that write-off. So Project 2025 is interested in both making employer-provided health care more costly for companies and making private health care more costly for the patient. But wait, there's more. Project 2025 suggests the next conservative president lock the door and snap the key. So these policies cannot be undone. Quote, Treasury should support legislation instituting a 3/5 vote threshold in the U.S. House and the Senate to raise income or corporate tax rates to create a wall of protection for the new rate structure. That's on page 698. Former President Trump, for his part, has been touting another brilliant tax scheme. This was him on Thursday at a press conference at Mar-a-Lago.
We're not going to charge tax to Social Security, the seniors. We're not going to do it. We're not going to charge. And also tax. I say the two things. We're going to have no tax on seniors, Social Security, and we're going to have no tax on tips. Very simple.
Putting aside that he really does seem to have trouble stringing two sentences that make any sense together, that what he just said sounds like a sweet deal, like how a kid running for class president promises pizza for lunch every day. But when you read between the lines, it doesn't actually add up. Removing a tax on tips, the Center for American Progress said, would do little for restaurant servers, but deliver big to, say, money managers who could, under this law, transform commissions that they earn into a tip-based model and pay no tax on their earnings. As far as taxes on Social Security, a majority of low and middle income Americans on Social Security do not earn enough money to be taxed on their benefits, but rich folks do. Higher earners who still receive Social Security because it's a universal benefit would benefit the most. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, eliminating taxes on Social Security would accelerate Social Security's insolvency by a year to 2032, and it would bring Medicaid to insolvency in 2030, 6 years ahead of the current rate. It would increase the deficit by over $1 trillion, which will then lead to more cuts. Now, if these policies don't benefit you and they don't benefit the government programs, whom exactly do they benefit? I'll let you guess. Joining me now is Dorothy Brown. She's a professor and chair in taxation at Georgetown University Law Center. She's the author of the book, The Whiteness of Wealth, How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It. Professor, good to see you. Thank you for get through this because it's a dense book anyway. It's not easy to read, Project 2025, but the tax part is laden with few words that mean a lot of things. So let's break some of this down. Before the break, we went over a lot. Project 2025 calling for in terms of tax changes. Is there anything in here that worries you particularly?
Yes, there's something that worries me more than what you talked about in the last segment, and it's also found in that chapter on Treasury Department. I call it Trump 2.0. Project 2025 says they will reverse, I'm quoting their language, the racist equity agenda of the Biden administration and their Treasury Department. Fairness, Allie, that's what equity means in the Biden administration. Project 2025 is against the fair administration of our tax laws because they don't want to play fair. They want to audit their enemies, politicians who have beat them, journalists who have outed their illegal activity, prosecutors who helped bring them to justice, anyone who's ever crossed Donald Trump. They could also revoke the tax-exempt status of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund or the ACLU or other heroic organizations who have held Donald Trump's feet to the fire when he was president. They could leak personal tax return information just for embarrassment or for doxing. And while that's illegal, who would stop them? Not the Department of Justice. That would be just another arm of the administration under Trump 2.0. And how would they do this? By creating or increasing the number of people who work at Treasury and across the federal government whose job depends on pleasing the president. I'm angry about this, and we should all be angry because they want to target our fellow Americans and use our tax dollars to do it.
Yeah, you bring up a point that that every expert who we have on every topic here brings up, and that is the Schedule F and the firing of up to 50,000 expert bureaucrats and replacing them with loyalists is the part of this thing that is most dangerous because it will entrench this. It's not the kind of thing a next president could come in and reverse because now you've entrenched politics in what is supposed to be an apolitical project. The other matter that bothers me is the regressive nature of these taxes, right? The concept of there's just going to be two tax levels. Everybody floats this every time there's an election. Sounds great, right? A flat tax. You can fill out your taxes on a postcard. There's a reason we don't fill out our taxes on a postcard because people have lots of reasons why not to give the government more money than they need to? And some of those reasons are really valid. There's stuff in here that's just downright regressive, including a consumption tax, because it doesn't matter whether I earn $1 billion a year or $10,000 a year, I probably drink the same amount of milk. So if you make the $10,000 person pay more for consuming milk than you make the $1 billion person, that's unfair.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it will affect our lowest income Americans, our lowest income workers who are doing everything they can, working multiple jobs to try to make ends meet, and they do it. Why? So that you can give corporations a lower tax rate, which means corporate shareholders, which means the richest Americans among us. That is not fair. And it goes back to their wanting to change or reverse, in their language, the quote unquote racist equity agenda, when all the Biden administration has done in the Treasury Department is seek fairness. They don't want to play fair.
Talk to me about this two-rate, nearly flat tax system. What, good or bad?
Yes, it's bad because it's exactly what you said. If it's so, the highest tax rate now is 37%. It goes down to 30%. So millionaires who are already escaping taxation get another break. They want the tax rate on income from stock to go down from 20% to 15%. Which would be higher than working class Americans would pay because they don't have money in the stock market in a way that gives them that access to that low 15% rate. So working class, middle class Americans would see their taxes go up, and the richest Americans, like those oil barons, right, who were in the room with Trump, talking about getting tax breaks, talking about getting policies that support them. Those people, those billionaires, they would love this. And that's just not fair.
Professor Brown, good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Dorothy Brown is a professor and chair in taxation at Georgetown University Law Center and author of Whiteness of Wealth, How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It.